First off, how are you guys doing? How are we doing?
I think we're doing as good as you can do after 2 days of serious conferencing.
Yeah, hanging in there.
Awesome. I guess we'll do introductions. That feels right. Okay, Mathias. Well, of course, you've been on the show numerous times now, but actually, why don't we go down the line just for any new audience? Mathias, introduce yourself. Why am I bugging you all the time? And why do I have you here?
Nothing you can say the word dog, it triggers me. I'm Mathias. I'm the CEO at Holepunch. I co-founded the company with Andrew some years ago. And
wait, you're a co-founder? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did not even know that. Did not know that. Okay, cool.
David has been around at the same time also. Obviously, Paolo also started as a small team. Now we're tons of people. Yeah. We make peer-to-peer apps, and the best one is Keet, and we work on that every day, and we're trying to make that the best freaking chat app that exists. I'm very, very privileged to be working with these guys, because we're making really, really cool stuff. So, yeah.
David, how did you get connected to this exactly?
I've been in contact with Mathias for quite a while before that. We worked together, and I actually met him at a conference in Oslo where he was talking about Merkle dags. Yeah. And I was like, what is a Merkle dag?
Don't say the year, because then they'll be like, it's going on forever.
It has been going on for some time. And that's where, I was sort of interested in stuff at that point as well, but having that really good conversation at that point sort of made us like each other and want to talk more and stuff, and we ended up doing some work.
So y'all get along?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hit or miss.
But yeah, sometimes remember about that bugs being triggering. But yeah. So I got a text from Mathias one day saying, "Why don't you do it in a minute?" And I happened to be totally free, and I was like, "Yes, finally."
Yes, finally he called me.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So it was really cool to get in on this, like I said at the very beginning, and help define it and break down the paradigms of how this can go and how this can work. And at the time, obviously, there was nothing out there like this, and so we were just we believe that this is something that works based on knowledge and experience and all these different things. We didn't know, you know what I mean? But it was just that combining of fuck yeah, we can do this. Yeah. You know what I mean? That really for me helped me just go in a hard straight line with it,
Dude, that's crazy too, because it's funny how much that expands and kind of builds on itself, because after you guys built Holepunch and then Pair Runtime, it was my using of Keet and all of this stuff that I was like, holy shit, because in my experience, I'm not a developer. I've just been kind of a pro user for 20 odd years for peer-to-peer stuff, and they've all just been they're great from the context of how comfortable I am with a computer, but they're awful. I would never give it to my wife or my friends, that sort of thing. And it wasn't until Keet really that I was like, holy shit, no, we can actually build peer-to-peer I've always thought it ought to feel you know?
That's exactly how we feel about it. From being I was a 90s kid, with the IE 5.5 and all that kind of stuff. You're trying to make things talk together, and your mental model is oh, I just make this computer talk to that computer and it all feels point to point. I think even today, some people still think, oh, when I'm direct messaging someone, it's going from one device to another. And obviously, in almost all cases,
direct.
That isn't the case. Unless it's built on Pair, it kind of isn't.
Yeah, Andrew had a really good talk yesterday. I don't know if you saw it, but just about exactly this problem, this unlearning all the things we learned. I went to university and I had to take some computer science. It was all about all this complexity we actually added because we can do that.
Yeah.
And it's just canonical, this is stuff you have to learn. And then you come out of it and you start doing peer-to-peer and you're like, oh, I don't need any of it now.
You just tell me a bunch of stuff that I shouldn't even need using.
It's interesting because then when you talk to developers, it's imprinted in your system.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to unlearn a lot of stuff.
The number of people that I talk to who just kind of don't believe it.
Yeah.
They're like, oh well, no, that doesn't work like that. It's just not.
Exactly.
It's just not going to work.
It's just because you're trained. When you study computer science and you start building things in the world, you're trained to think that there's all this complexity out there that's just required. It's just inherently essential in building anything. And I should introduce myself also because I'm Andrew.
Oh yeah, I guess we should make it.
But yeah, so I'm Andrew. I've been doing this, I guess, for about 6 years now. I'd say maybe 7 years. And I remember, first meeting Mathias because I was building kind of a very traditional web service that I wanted to peer-to-peerify because I was having so much trouble operating it, and I was kind of doing all the ops for it. And this was in a research lab that I think Mathias came through, and that's when we first met. But the whole idea behind this was, you'd have scientists that wanted to share research data with each other, and they would upload it to this big cluster, this Kubernetes cluster that I was running, and it was such a pain to do. And I was just thinking, like, all these scientists have the analyses on their computer, they have the data on their computer, they have the code, and the people they want to share it with are right next to them, but they can't do it. And so they have to rely on me, who's 1,000 miles away, and it's 4 a.m. And so, I'm the middleman in all of this knowledge sharing that just should be so much more seamless.
Yeah.
And so I remember, in that time trying to find alternatives, and I found some of Mathias's modules and started playing with them, and they were really, really cool, and you could just see a lot of potential in them and where they could go.
Was it Holepunch at that time already?
We've been building the building blocks for open source for probably 10 years.
The hypercore stuff is like 12.
Yeah. Don't tell me how old I am. But like for different phases, because I actually I was just talking to one of our guys yesterday, and he was like, because the origin story I tell once in a while for myself was I was just a young, in my early 20s, probably not, it's probably been going on for a while. But
just no numbers. Let's just...
But I was just sitting on my couch wanting to watch BitTorrent stuff on my TV, and I was like, I couldn't get it to work, and I was like, I'll just write a BitTorrent client, and then there's a path from there to then making modular software, yada yada, and Andrew discovering it, coming with tons of feedback, making it 10x better, yada yada. And it's just been a path from that to that, but it's like been this very organic, actually. And then obviously peer-to-peer, very open source, just people meeting up, met at conferences. And then at some point we were like, okay, because I think you actually touched about it really nicely, saying, is this for nerds, or is this something that we want to do for everybody?
Yeah.
Because we're very good at making it for nerds. Like, that's why these guys discover it. That's why they all stay, right? Because it's like a virus in a good way. It comes in, you're like, oh, I just want to do more and more with this.
Yeah.
But we were like, actually, we need to make this good enough and friendly enough so we can have it run everywhere. So that you can understand it without reading a paper. That we can make apps that people actually don't even care that they're peer-to-peer. Like, the only reason we actually say that Keet is peer-to-peer is because it's cool marketing, but you shouldn't care, right? It should just be like a really good privacy app.
It just works, and
it costs us nothing, so it's like no trade-offs, etc. And that was the thing. That was actually the next phase of our cinematic universe in that phase, where we're like, we got to that agreement, and we're like, let's get serious, and we formed the company and start working with Paolo in that way. Like, I've been working with Paolo for a while, but like, get some money involved just to be.
But that phase is actually like a relatively recent one. I think Holepunch is like 3.5 years old at this stage, but this whole story has been going on for 10 plus years.
Long time before it.
Yeah. And actually, I think that's
you can track it on GitHub.
Well, that's the thing, because it all comes from the open source community. Like, I was aware of Mathias before that conference because I used his modules. And I like making open source modules, and Andrew likes making open source modules, and that spirit of collaboration and that spirit of like, mutual cooperation for like mutual benefit, which is kind of antithetical to a lot of like highly competitive, like aggressive sort of strategies in the marketplace. Like, that's missing a lot. Like, the open source sort of revolution from the 90s onwards, maybe a bit before, was like fundamentally, it made a whole huge shift. Like from onto lots of servers use Linux now, right? And the next phase of that, like P2P and open source, are like this. You know what I mean? Like, you need both to make it all work.
No, there's something really interesting, and I've talked about this on the show quite a bit, and I've actually wanted to do a talk about it because I don't think people quite get that the understanding of exactly how economic incentives like aligned cooperation or competition, and how it is that I actually think Bitcoin is a critical part to this story, especially when it comes to funding, because most of the time you don't get, I think the reason it stays in the developer community and in the CLI, interfaces for nerds basically, is because it's so unbelievably hard to fund a product that isn't competitive with somebody, that isn't fighting for the network. But what's interesting is that, and not to turn this into a fiat money discussion, but when you have that constant inflation and the expansion of debt, what you actually do is you create a competition for who can get the resources that we have fast enough before the prices go up. So like you get the new money and you're like, I have to buy these houses while they're still 250,000 because they're going to be 320,000. So you suck up as many resources as you can, and you're in a competitive environment with other people. However, when you have sound money, if you make your house better, you make the value of my money go up. So you're actually in a more cooperative position, which is why, like, talking about like standing on the shoulders of giants and like moving this thing up layers, is that every time you guys built something and then you found the modules and then you got together with him, like I would never have even like imagined or attempted to build something like the Hypercore stack and Pair Runtime. But after you guys built Pair Runtime, I had a day where I was trying to move 40 gigs from my MacBook, because about once a month I run out of space doing the media stuff and everything. Because one interview is like, oh yeah, sure, 40 gigs, why not? And I was trying to move files from my MacBook to my Linux. They were 3.5 feet apart. They were sitting right next to each other. I had an SMB server running on my Linux. I have Nextcloud. I have 10 supposed solutions to this problem. And I spent an hour trying to get it to work, in which I was in the middle of a recording and it said, you're out of hard drive space. Please delete something before you can start recording again. And I couldn't do it. I ended up opening up a new hard drive and chucking it into a bay, plugging it into my MacBook, dumping, and then moving it over to my Linux to get it off. And the only thing that had worked through all of that time to move any individual files and that I've been using constantly was Keet. Was Keet. I just couldn't do 40 gigs of a folder of 800 files. And then I had been messing with Pair Runtime, and it just struck me. I was like, no. Like, I have Bitcoin. I can do this. Like, I can have someone build this thing, and this problem can actually be solved in a way that makes sense. And that puts just these two devices. Isn't that the way the internet was always supposed to work?
Absolutely. And that's what Pair Runtime is supposed to inspire. We say, it's the nerds building it, but like it's actually multiple layers of nerds until it gets into like just normal general people. And that's so Keet's about reaching the mass market.
But it's hard for us actually, even because we're building it. We had a case actually in Andrew, like 2 weeks ago or a week ago, where Andrew was sending me a ton of files, and we both live in the same city, and it was really fast because he was just sharing them through Keet, and it was just the speed was insane. I was like writing to Andrew like, it's really fast, and Andrew was like,
dude, look at these bits per second,
because it's like because we know where the bodies are. Holy shit, it's really fast. And Andrew was like, no, you don't understand. This is because we live near each other. And then that made me. Andrew was kind of like saying, no, it's because we're near each other. I'm like thinking, that's because we're still trained to think that shouldn't matter. It's actually not like a hack that we're near each other. It's just because we are near each other. And that is fast because we're near each other. It's just a consequence of peer-to-peer technology. It would still, be as fast as it could if we were further apart. But it's so cool that matters. Because that takes that thing away where
it brings geography back into like it's
more natural.
It's a connection to the real world rather than a middleman.
Well, it's kind of like it's limited. It's only bounded by your network capacity. It's only bounded by your hardware, which I think is what's so cool about it. Like there's no other artificial constraints that have to be imposed by somebody else.
It's raw. Like it's like the actual internet connecting device to device, which is just epic.
Because I was thinking a lot about it in your talk. You did a Plan B, which I really like, by the way. Because you were talking about how the current economic system is really hard for us to think about because we've been living in it for so long, and it's like we're shaped by it. And I think it's the same way about centralized technology. it's really, really hard to not think centralized, even for us as like people who know.
Yeah.
Because we're so.
It's just the frame. It's just the frame of reference that has always been when you interact with things. Yeah.
And then the only other reference we actually have with peer-to-peer technology is actually piracy, because it's like, for me at least, it was BitTorrent back in the day.
Yeah. Legal piracy.
Downloading.
Of course.
And then that had actually trained my brain then to be like bad.
Yeah.
Bad. And that's actually what I hear with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Me and Andrew, when we were just making modules, we got our funding from grants and like donations. And actually we were pretty successful as you can be with that. But we hit that a lot. People were just like, okay, so so it's piracy.
Yeah.
Like, no, we're actually trying to freaking.
So you're doing illegal things.
Yeah.
What kind of illegal things are you doing?
Change that expectation.
It's really hard, right? Because
It's like, no, we're just building the internet without a middleman taking a rent. Like,
and the next thing,
why
the next thing they're saying is, then, so how do I make my money back? And we're like,
Yeah.
well, no, we're making the infrastructure, and then you can make things on top.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And Bitcoin, for us, the environment there was the only place where we actually find people who had that mindset.
Yeah.
And that changed because I was not shaped by the Bitcoin community that way, because I came up through peer-to-peer. But that changed my opinion about the Bitcoin community a lot, because there was actually people who had money. People in the open source community generally don't have money.
Yeah.
And we're willing to put them
Because they're in open source.
Hopefully we can change that.
Hopefully, we can change that for sure.
Yeah.
But there was like a shared sense of like implied radicalism, I guess. That was very interesting for me.
Yeah. Yeah. There's an element of, like, this is one of the really powerful things, and it's funny, I remember conversations in like 2012 and 2013 where we were talking about this, because you're watching like one of the first bubbles happen, and you're thinking about what happens when like you get a bunch of paranoid crypto anarchists and open source people who have literally designed their own money. And then that money is successful. Like, Bitcoin is literally, obviously it's literally the open source money, but it's also the money of open source. And when you can actually capitalize on it, and you think about it in the context that sound money actually puts people in a cooperative stance, I have no reason to think of anybody who is building something in the Bitcoin space as truly a competitor, because they are making everything better. And I think that's going to be such a floor to kind of lift up the open source development at the exact same. It has. It's literally done it.
It's funny you say that, because it's exactly the same thing. Basically, from day one we started the company, about like, it's not a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
Like, it's all about just making the market bigger.
Yeah.
And have this, the English speakers call it Cambrian
explosion.
It's like one of those English words that I don't know what it means, but I'm not, and like, it's pretty good. But like, just have tons, we need tons of apps.
Yeah.
We need tons of apps that compete with each other, so actually the best app comes out, rather than it's just like, no, it's the centralized one you're locked into. But that's very interesting for me.
Yeah.
I think what's so cool about this also is that there's so many reasons to be interested in peer-to-peer. You can be interested in it for resilience, because there are no middlemen, so it's going to work if any of your devices are online. But you can also just be interested in it from this angle, the idea that if you have full control of your data and the code that you're using, that you're running on that data, then anybody can fork it and modify it and tweak it and create a whole, that's where the Cambrian explosion comes in, this whole proliferation of apps that give users, very different experiences depending on what they want. And so it's kind of like, it can create this very competitive but also creative environment. You can't get, It's kind of like the dream of API mashups that was never really realized, because people want full, to seize control of their own APIs. But in the peer-to-peer world, you can't really do that, because
it's permission. It was permissioned trying to be permissionless, but it necessarily couldn't be.
Exactly.
But peer-to-peer can actually be that. This can be.
And it also has, Andrew actually talked about this in his talk. Was it yesterday?
Which stage was it on?
The UTXO room.
Okay. Okay.
Full house was really cool. But he talked about this thing about data is forever, because that's one of the challenges in peer-to-peer. But it's also one of the features, I think, where the systems, because at the end of the day, it's just data and code, and that's a challenge, because all the code is always out there, all the old versions. But it also means it always works. You can have an old version, and if it worked at that point, it's going to work again now within like reason. So you can make things and you can push them, put them out in the public, and you don't really need to maintain it in the same way. Like, there'll still be bugs, the bugs will still be there, but it'll still work when you dust it off like 5 years later. And I had this experience because I continuously do that as an open source developer. I found one of my old modules I'm using every day the other day. It was like 7 years since I'd updated it, but it still worked because it was software. It still worked. Yeah. The only thing that was broken on that software was that the README that was displaying was using a centralized service to display like a picture. And that picture was just completely gone.
Just gone.
And it made the whole thing just
lost to the graveyard of the internet.
Rendered terribly. And I was just thinking like, all this work that went into this, and the reason why this looks really broken is
because of the one centralized thing.
Thing. And everything else, because it's just code and data, it can't work. Yeah. So I think that kind of mentality is interesting.
Yeah. But I also like this idea of being able to dust things off later and just use them. It's kind of like, there's such a huge gap when you use something like Microsoft Word or Paint or something. You have local software. It's for you. You have it, you save it to a file, it's on your disk. If you have a program that can read that format later, it's just going to work. But it's so funny just how much more complicated that gets as soon as you want a networked Microsoft Word. As soon as you want to have any kind of collaborative experience there, suddenly it just blows up. But there's no reason why you couldn't have some kind of social app, for example, that just has all the same properties of Microsoft Word. It's just something that you have on your computer. All your social data is just on your computer, and you dust it off at some point in the future, and it just works. It's like I think that's what peer-to-peer is kind of trying to bring us to.
Yeah. I had in fact, I got to talk about this just after your talk on stage. But I had this like crazy, I've had a couple of aha moments with the pair runtime stuff. One of them was when I was working with the two developers that we've been, trying to solve I can move files between my computer problem. And we were looking at stuff, doing our Monday meetings or whatnot, and doing a rundown of stuff. And then as we were looking through it, he realized there was an error or something like messed up with it. He's like, wait, let me do this real quick. And he fixed it and then immediately sent me the key, and I ran it, the fixed version, like instantly. And that was like my first, like, holy shit, like I'm running this off his computer, like with nothing, like this just happened, And then the other one was when I was doing this by myself, because like I said, like so much of the bane of my internet existence have just been trying to get my two devices in the same place to talk to each other. Isn't it? It's so ridiculous. It's like, log into your Apple ID. And, but I was I was using an LLM and asking it to build an app for me on Pair runtime, and using the normal desktop application framework, and I'm building a little drag and drop thing for files, because I have a bunch of little single purpose apps that I've built to like convert a GIF, change the format so it's ready to upload to YouTube, drag and drop, transcribe it, give me subtitle files so I can put it back in. And I've done all of this with just AI, just like basic LLMs.
That's actually very exciting to me in itself, like people building on Pair using LLMs.
Exactly.
It's a whole new people that can build on it. So.
Yeah. And I'm trying to make a little framework for it where I can have a little, like just kind of like a sidebar app, drag and drop files or folders or anything, and then run all of my separate things on those files. Which it's a level of design that I'm not used to, so I've had to reiterate and do a bunch of things, and LLMs are only so good at it. But it was funny that I finally got the first function to work. I got my current file object, everything, like the main framework was finally working, and my base function was like copy file. It's like, just can I do this with the file? And I copied it and sent it to a new location on my Mac. And I was like, oh shit, it's working. My stupid app that doesn't do anything is working. And so I immediately was like pair stage or in a pair seed or whatever, and got the key. And then I was like, is this gonna work? And I jumped over to my Linux machine. I said pair run and put it in, and then bloop, popped right up on my Linux machine. And I dragged something from my desktop and I hit copy, and then bloop, brings up the thing, and I saved it to a new folder, and I was like, holy fuck, this works. This is so cool, man. So cool.
Love it.
But yeah, it's been a trip.
I love that thing about P2P, because it's always like that. It's always like it's one command.
Yeah.
And you should see Andrew's face when you run that command, because he knows all the layers it's going through, like all the errors that can happen.
It's like, it didn't error? It didn't again? Oh my God.
It used to be, because we've been working on perfecting that basically for 10 years, right? Like obviously it's like iterations, and because we solve one problem, we solve the next problem, we solve the next one. Like 5 years ago, that would have worked 50% of the time. And we have been like, that's freaking amazing.
It's amazing.
It's a hard problem. And after we got really serious and like looked into it, spent a ton of resources on it. Like we got it now actually to the point where it's actually 100%. Or it's like, nothing's ever 100%, that's close as you can get. And that's just amazing to me because that's like where we can get these unlocks, where we can actually have, because it sounds so complicated. This is our problem because we're mega nerds. We like to make it sound complicated. People always ask me, I'm like, let me tell you about DHTs and stuff. And like, that's okay.
You want to explain how it works, you know?
But at the end of the day,
everybody's like, well, I can't use that because you just explained 80 things.
And then they come back and they're like, oh, I read about them, and then it's like, actually, you don't need to know any of that. Just like, freaking stage it, run it, or like, it's really, really simple.
Do the things.
Yeah. That's like a continuous path for us also, just like to make it approachable.
Yeah. But I think in many ways that's also the story of like a Holepunch, because this is a long journey and like we've been doing this before, but in the early pre-Holepunch days, it was always 50%, 60%. I think Holepunch is just a story of how do we go to 100%.
Yeah.
And that's a huge amount of work to get those last percentage points. It's just really, really tough. Because you can get to 98%, but some things are going to be problematic on some networks, but not others. And we need to find ways of debugging those weird situations. And we're getting a lot better at that over time. But those last few percents are really, really tough.
Yeah, it's a limit, right? Like it never actually gets there.
It's an arms race. But then that also creates these situations where I think on the last 3 or 4 flights I took, I got free Wi-Fi. Because the network, the P2P engine just breaks through.
Dude, I've run into that a couple of times where it's like you're not allowed to send images or video, and I bring up Keet and there's an image. I'm like, okay.
Out of the recording.
It's like me going. I'm on the plane, right? I'm like, actually, I want to stay connected. So I go and I'm law-abiding citizen. I go actually to pay, and while I'm paying, Keep does the choo-choo. And I'm like, oh, I guess I paid already or something. And then it's like,
does he have my hotel room?
Yeah. And then it's like, oh, okay. But it's just like, it's fine. Like,
I just found a route.
Another quote, like, life finds a way, Keet finds a way. Like, it's like probably routing. I'm sure the pilot is like, all the alarms are going off.
Insert Jeff Goldblum. Keet finds a way.
That's one of the things that I don't like when people don't believe it. Right, it's because people don't have that model of like what we're named after, the Holepunch. Like they don't like all their lives, all our lives, we've been like blocked out from being able to use things without, we've been gate kept and all that kind of stuff, right? And so that's what we're used to. And the idea that you can just now with this tech just go point to point and it punches through anything is just like it's mind blowing. It's hard to believe, but it's real.
Yeah.
Actually, sometimes it makes our life really hard because when you make peer-to-peer technology, it's all about defense in depth, kind of like with Bitcoin. Like, it's like everybody's anniversary, yada yada. So we have all these defensive, like, this didn't work because somebody's probably attacking it, so it does this all around. So we have tons of bugs, and we're like, we never see them because the network just adapts. And then at some point we're like, wait, how this code never ran and it never worked. And it's like, it just took the alternate route, and then you fix it, it becomes much faster and stuff. So it's actually really hard because you're just the software is fighting itself.
But at the same time, it's super resilient. It can't. It doesn't go down.
Mix it that with AI, it's very scary to me because that's where like we're not going to be able to shut it off.
True.
But yeah, scary.
In terms of the Cambrian explosion,
allegations,
all of the apps and all of that.
Skynet.
Getting ahead of ourselves.
But there is a piece of like in terms of like not just applications, but not necessarily services, but there's the idea of like an ecosystem of P2P tech, including AI, including different things. And that's where it can get really interesting in terms of reciprocity between peers and like, I need some storage stuff, but can I have some AI stuff? And like, that's a whole new level of human interaction as well. That's completely just between peers.
Yeah. Maybe that's actually.
Well, I was just going to add that, like, the one cool property of any peer-to-peer network is that peers help other peers. So the more peers you have, the better it gets. So, any of these two-person point-to-point things, it's really, really cool. But the more peers you can add to that, the better things can become. We recently, in the last year, we got IDs out in Keet, so you can have cross-device identities. But that also gives us this really cool social backbone for building out lots of other features like social mirroring and selecting a set of trusted peers that you might want to be, you might want to use to enhance your experience. And it's kind of like, these are things that you can do now, or we can start investigating what we want to build there. But yeah, it's that. Anything that we can do to get more peers is really, really good.
And I love how it incentivizes good actors, whereas other systems can incentivize bad actors. Do you know what I mean? It sort of incentivizes, let's work together. It incentivizes that behavior. And I think just on a philosophical level, we need to see more of that.
Yeah. I think it's also like super critical, and because it's extremely hard to overstate exactly how much if you tweak like the balance or the incentives at a very low level, how much that actually continues to manifest up the layers without even people understanding that it's happening. Like that your behavior just changes, how you react to it changes, and
that's how we shift the frame. Like we're talking about being in that centralized frame all of the time. There's a primitive right at the bottom of all of this, which is the Kademlia, the thing that going all of this right at the bottom, and then that sort of each level of the stack, it's changed the way we code. Like we code, that seems to have affected our frame, and the tools that we use and the tools that we make and how we work with each other. It's very decoupled, but like very, very effective. And putting all of that together, it's just like I think that is how we move forward as a species.
I think totally agree, and I also think to a degree that's what you're saying, because we've had this discussion internally a lot, where we've written tons of open source code, like for P2P and everything, tons, and it's running everywhere. And it's running in Google, it's running in Microsoft. If you go to the download size, that's billions and billions of downloads, right? We never made any money off it because it's just open source. We just did it for fun. And I often have this and it's very popular. And sometimes I think why did we not make any money of it? And to a degree, it's because you make money on products, good products. The reason why we make a lot of good open source software is because it's really easy. We just write software, we just put it out there, people can download it. It's easy. It doesn't cost us anything, we just do it. Making products is really hard. And it's really hard because really quickly somebody wants you to take your credit card out of your pocket. They're like, if I want to make an app, hosting it, whatever, it costs money. So it's like I'm not gonna make 1,000 of those. I'm gonna make one. That one I make is probably gonna be bad because I'm bad. I'm not that good at writing software. I'm just good at writing a lot of software. So I've written a bajillion software. 1% of it is really popular. If I could do the same with products, that would be a huge success story for me. But it's too hard. Peer-to-peer for me solves that by I don't know if it's incentive, but it's definitely just removing that disincentive. Because I actually think there's a disincentive for making products right now.
That's a good way of putting it.
And that's one of the reasons why originally I was super excited about this, because it's like just sit at home, sit on my couch, product. Might be shitty. Somebody might pick it up, then I'll make it better. That iteration cycle is so powerful. So for me, it's all about that.
Now, this might actually be a good segue when you're talking about reciprocity and I'll give you some AI if you give me some storage, because I'm curious where things are headed, where the next 1,000 little modules and little things that you can look at the reactions. Oh my god!
It's a big topic.
It's a great topic. Things that
Well, to take a Keet-focused angle on it, I think we have Pear, which is the platform for building all these crazy tools and modules and making little apps with them or big apps with them. And we have Keet, which runs on top of Pear, and it's our chat app. And we decided to focus on chat because if you actually decompose what's really hard about chat, it generalizes to...
It's primitives to everything. I thought about that from the very beginning. I was like, why didn't they do the low-hanging fruit of just getting files between computers? But then I think about it, it's like, if you can get the chat app to work, you can get anything to work,
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of, excuse me, sorry. You can edit that out. And so
everybody stop and clear your throat. Okay.
We've had an intense few days. So the way I think about how we build Keet, it's kind of like Jiro Dreams of Sushi. If you've seen that movie of someone who just focuses on making kind of one thing really, really well for 30 years, we are kind of refining and refining and refining these models for chat, because we know that when we can actually make them scale the way we want them to, you can make something like a Twitter or a Facebook or any kind of social app
or
any kind of file
or
sharing.
Drive even,
Yeah, exactly. Or a file sharing app. Or
file sharing is easy after you do that.
Netflix style media sharing. All of these things you can put, if you squint, you can fit them into kind of a chat oriented framework, or you could just take the data structures we built for that and easily convert them to work in those situations. So the hard problems are all captured by that. So I think we're now kind of reaching this point where we think we've come across a really solid set of data structures and algorithms for doing chat incredibly well. And from there, I think there's so many possible branching points of other things you can build with that.
It's the basis for smart contracts as well, right?
Yeah, you do that. You can totally run anything like those kind of networks. It's actually funny because all this stuff that Andrew was mentioning, we can't solve. Basically this year we've been like hunkered down and just in like crazy optimization performance mode, and we're rolling all that stuff out. And the thing we're really bad at, that we're trying to get better at, is just telling people how it works. Because we're sitting on, and it's all open source, so much stuff.
Yeah.
It's a communication bottleneck in a way.
Yeah, it's just hard for us because we're too ingrained in our own nerdiness. But I think also that's a huge part of it for us, like making it more tortureful for developers, because it's already out there. It's already really simple. We're just bad at sometimes explaining it because we go straight to Kademlia. David said Kademlia, saying it again. It's bad. But that's really interesting for us because we could build Keet 2 or 3 times faster if we didn't care about anything else. Me and Andrew had this discussion the other day, because we care about solving this for the world. So every time we're like, Keet is not a chat app. It's like collaborative peer-to-peer app. All the data structures are generalized that way, all open source. If we just wanted to make a chat, I'm sure we could just cut a ton of corners. But we're always thinking about the general case, because we want this to be a huge revolution. And we had all those unlocks, and we actually already passed that. So now we just need to seal the deal on that and roll the last things out. We're planning on doing that this year. It's really exciting. So it's going to be tons of releases this year on all the open source things. For tons of performance. It's been a journey for us for sure. Just getting the stuff to where we want it to be, and it's definitely getting there. It's very exciting.
How's the database migration to RocksDB? How big of an undertaking is that?
Well, I said originally it was going to be 2 weeks, and then I was
4 months ago,
and then it took 6 months because I was in charge, and at some point I was like, I can't be in charge. And then I put one of our really smart guys in charge, and he basically just finished it this week in like 3 months, which is really, really. He's starting to look like me, but so that's.
Is he any good? How much hair has he lost in the last 2 months?
How stressed that look is.
Oh man, that guy's good. Look at the shine.
I ain't never doing anything with RocksDB, I'll tell you that.
Well, the hard thing for him is kind of like, he'll work on it, and then he'll be like, I find this bug, but it's your code, so I think it's my fault. It's like, no, that's probably my bug. So it's just.
At least he's polite.
Yeah.
At least he's nice about it.
But we finally just actually turned the last corner. I think we're going to be rolling out some stuff. The next weeks on that. It's very exciting. It's looking really, really, really intensely good. Andrew's been working on some crazy stuff.
Yeah, and along with the RocksDB one, we've also been really iterating on the database, the database that runs inside the actual room, kind of the higher level database that stores all the chats and the invitations and the members. And I think we came up with, it's one of these funny things where we've gone through many iterations with it. And the first one was, pretty focused on just chat. Like, can we actually solve this for the chat use case? And over time, it becomes more generalizable, just as along with that theme. And I think we've landed on something that should work incredibly well for our cases, but should also be very upgradable so that we can change it a lot in the future. And it'll make it a lot easier to prototype different kinds of social apps as well. And this is all going to come as part of this one big kind of database push.
Yeah, it's really hard to roll out and implement, unfortunately. So we're going to make there's going to be Keet 2.0. It's the same stuff, but it's just optimized to death. But it's really, really good. People always text me. They're like, because Keet is really fast and then it's really slow at some things right now, to be real. And people always text me like, "Oh, it'd be cool if you can just not do all this networking stuff because it's slow when I search for rooms or something." And I'm always like, you don't realize it's just because
it's not the networking.
We're just really bad at writing that local code that searches it because we've been working on these really, really hard problems and we've been trying to scale the team. It's actually just because it's like a loop that's intensely slow. So Andrew just took charge of that and just,
So I mean, just the TLDR of it, without getting too nerdy about it, is instead of, so right now when you do a search, it does just really, really naive stuff. Like if you type in the search bar over your rooms, it's going to have to basically go into all of those rooms. And when it does this, it has to kind of engage the networking stack and just spin up a bunch of stuff. It's very, very expensive to do this. And it's going to do this, like it's going to scan over your rooms and do that. So it's really, really, really silly. And we've basically just, we're getting rid of the silliness. The next one is actually, we're going to be a lot more careful about how we spin out those different pieces. We're going to introduce a bunch of scheduling to do that very efficiently. And it should just be a lot smoother, a lot more local.
I'm sure marketing will like it because it's one of those slides we can make where we're now 1,000 times faster and it sounds really good, but somebody's going to be like, wait, was that just because they're really slow before? So that's really exciting.
Everything's relative, right?
And like Andrew said, we took on all these problems because, again, these are all problems everybody's going to face. And we generalized them. We put them into our data structures, rolling out also open source. I had a little bit about that in my talk. Going to be rolling out really soon. It's going to be super exciting, very exciting. It's going to be a lot easier to build apps.
I think the dream is always, thinking, I don't know if this is a great metaphor really, but Firebase was such an unlock for people when it came to building, centralized apps. When that was launched, it made it trivial to, spin this up without needing to do database configurations or deal with user management. You could just, create this and you had your users for free and you had all your data models basically for free, really, really digestible. And I think that's like a really nice end goal to get to when it comes to, how developers can actually interact with all of our stuff. But it's just, we haven't really had the right ideas for how to approach that problem. And I think it's one of these interesting things where the more we iterate on this, kind of the closer that seems to be to falling out is just like a natural consequence of what we're making. So I think this new database, for example, it's just very easy to digest and understand and work with in a safe way, a safe, upgradable way. And I think I think we're kind of slowly reaching this point where developers will be able to use this stuff really easily to make things at huge scale.
Hell yeah.
That's the dream.
You gotta break us out of our nerd talk.
Well, I really think like so much about producing blocks that other people can build. Like it's just, and that's and it's funny because like that's generally my relationship to it because like, as I said, I'm not a developer, but when they kind of reach a degree of maturity, at some point, suddenly I can build with it. Suddenly the developer that I'm working with can build with it, even though they're not super familiar with the tools. And the unlock is not linear. It's exponential, and I think I've been feeling the momentum for a long time. Like I've been in the Keet rooms for 2 years, and that momentum is definitely slowly starting. I mean, the pair development room just reached 500 people. And there's so many like little conversations like, oh, I'm doing a to-do app. I'm doing a thing. And we'll probably be in this situation where, 1,000 people build 2,000 things. And then 3 of them are just like, oh shit, this is crazy.
We have that. We have a lot of that internally. I don't know if you saw Paolo yesterday talk about just what Tether is doing. Tether is doing so many things. And a lot of it is building on peer-to-peer. And for us, at least, it's been an insane journey just having other teams work with this stuff, building things completely independent of us. And then we're just trying it. It's like, oh shit, it's like a P2P app that just freaking works. It's building on all the stack, and we were never involved. We're not used to that, me and Andrew, because we used to be involved in everything, because it used to be very rough. So that unlock for us is very scary, but also just insanely cool. And that's where I'm like, the next iteration of that is kind of like this true unstoppability, where we are not even involved in the, we don't know. I love this idea of we don't know anything that's going on. I already get this from Keet, where I talk to all these people at the conference and whatever that have conversations on Keet or like running their internal comms on Keet. And I'm just always thinking, I have no idea. Because I couldn't even find out if I wanted to. And I love that. I think it's such a
that is, it's the way, Like it's the only way to actually like align natural incentives and make conversations genuine again, that they literally naturally disperse. The connections naturally disperse. The network naturally grows and builds. Right. And you're back to what I think is like a real internet rather than this series of hierarchical platforms that we all just like filter through. You know, like this was the birth of the internet was that, you know, for a long time.
And also, I also think it's one, because I was talking to somebody else about this yesterday. I think it's, you know, there's that quote about any power corrupts kind of thing. I can't remember. But I've been thinking this just building Keet, because Keet is decentralized. And the tools are like very defensive. And they're so defensive that they can defend against even us, right? We can't do anything really. And sometimes we have bugs where you just wish you could log into a server. Let me just look at the
I could just fix this really easy.
It would take me 2 minutes. If I could just log in and just look, why is this error being thrown?
Yeah.
And so if I had that power, I would be so tempted.
Yeah.
I would be like, I'll just go ahead and look at that message. And we can't do it. We literally can't do it. And it's so frustrating. It's so but it's so good.
Yeah.
And then it takes us 2 weeks or something, right? But it's like, you need to have that, right? Because even us as developers can feel that, you know, it's tempting. So the technology just needs to have that built in from the beginning, and that's so cool. Yeah.
So basically,
when you download Keet from the App Store, it says this app does not collect any user data at all. Like there's zero there.
Love it.
That's a blessing, and it's a real curse.
That's a blessing, and it's also hard as shit for us to troubleshoot anything. That's hilarious.
But that means like it's kind of like almost rolling the time back a little bit. It means we need to have really good support people. Yeah. Because we need to like ask people a lot of questions, and hopefully they're willing. We need to have good users, you know, that can explain.
I'm a good user.
No, but like seriously, it's kind of like, you know, how did this happen? You know, what happened? Oh, you clicked that button. Could you remember what you saw? Like, I think that's really interesting, right? It's like it slows it down, obviously, but it also just makes it so fucking solid. Yeah,
I was about to say it slows it down with. It's a trade-off of slowing it down and making it more difficult, but with the benefit of robustness, resiliency, and it's just going to last, I think.
Yeah, and it creates more social cohesion as a result. Right? Yeah. It allows people to connect. Like anyone who's building peer-to-peer apps wants to connect with, or any app at all.
We talk so much with our users.
Yeah, we talk with our robot users a lot.
That's probably, I mean, everybody talks to the users. We really talk to them.
Yeah. Because we're not analyzing them, because we're not like putting them into, you know, big data machines to see what they think.
It's at the level of like sometimes where I'm like, I had one bug where I was deep working with Sasha sitting over there. I was like, at some point I was like, Sasha, I'm getting in the car. I'm driving over to your house. We're gonna look at this now because we need to look at what's happening on the device. Yeah. And we can't look at it anymore because even internally we don't have those tools because the technology just won't allow us. Yeah. And we fixed it. Yeah.
It was really funny we were grant funded for a very long time, and I moved to Copenhagen from the US to work more closely with Mathias. And when I was in Copenhagen, I had to move apartments all the time. And I moved to one apartment, and I was working there, and I discovered that like something about the network was like causing big issues with the hole punching. And the only way to fix that was for Mathias to come out to the apartment and for us to do it in this actual network.
Like, what's wrong with your stupid Wi-Fi?
We fixed it, but it was really tricky because I was going to move apartments again right after that, so we had to find ways to work around that to be like, maybe can we stay for one more day? Just
you're a bug hunter, you know. It's just like, let's go to the next Wi-Fi or whatever. What brand is this? You know.
One time, one of the guys texted me. He was like, you know how those hotel Wi-Fi's are really hard sometimes? I can just be the guy who goes around and stays at hotels. And like, if you need a guy like that,
just pay me.
I'm totally happy to do that.
It's really tough. Really tough.
Awesome. So the question is, how can Keet be used to connect local communities online using the example of like a small town?
I think that's interesting. Super interesting question. Because I think peer-to-peer, this is like actually one of the mega strengths of peer-to-peer. Like these local networks that are where people actually live together. And you can almost just envision it as like, you know, we could literally just have a cell tower in the city, right? And we could just be connecting people on a mesh, and we could do peer-to-peer things. I think that's the future we're looking for. Keet by itself actually does this. Like the technology will already do this.
Yeah.
Just create a room for the town.
Literally just create a room for the town, add people, and then maybe at some point the town invests in more infrastructure so people can connect just like on lands. That's really exciting.
You can even maybe in the future we'll add things like sub rooms inside of rooms also, where you can have like a big community, a big like cross-town room, and each town could be a little sub room in there if you want to.
Badminton club, for instance, and
I think that would be a way.
And it's actually funny because I think it's one of those questions that sounds like fun and quaint, but it's super important.
Yeah.
Because with the way the world is going and all these like natural disasters also,
right.
Local networks that don't go down, insanely important.
Yeah.
And if all those networks require us to connect to some overseas server or somewhere, it's going to fail. And if you can't get communication, it's a very, very quick path from not communicating to full anarchy.
Yeah.
There's still governments using Twitter to do announcements about crises, which, there's no resilience there really. Like Twitter goes. There was actually an incident, I think, in the Netherlands a year or two ago, where they put out an emergency alert on Twitter, but Twitter was down. And so from there they moved away from that. But what we have,
you got to get burned to change. Yeah.
And I also think it coupled. You know how cities also have those. I don't know if you have those in the US, but everywhere in Europe we have those big loudspeakers that they can turn on. The sound goes off and something's wrong. You could literally have those things that just beam out a peer-to-peer signal, right? Because the data doesn't matter where it comes from. It's things like a message in the room.
Yeah, it's interesting because like one of the things about like how the internet worked that always was intriguing, but then also like why is there this disconnect? Is that actually going back to something we talked about in the previous thing was the locale or the lack of geography online. And I would search something in Google and like trying to find something in my area that was like relevant to me, like where I was always awful. And then the only way to fix it was to be constantly tracked by my location with some giant, to send all of my data and where I am at any one point in time to California to be kept in a big giant database. And I think the kind of the network distance, like the geographic distance on a peer-to-peer network could actually be utilized in a way like that, which is just so cool to think that you could bring back the locality of the internet. You could search your network near you first before going out.
It's more real.
Yeah.
But what's also so cool is that the city or the town is very incentivized to make that network run really, really well. We talk a lot about how peer-to-peer can be used to take control of your own data, but a community taking control over its data collectively is also really, really interesting. So it's kind of when you give that community its Keet room, it is in control of its communication. And in the future, we can add, we would like to add lots of customization there to make it so that those communities can actually control the experience that they have when they.
It's exiting at every scale. And
I also think if people started using citywide networks, because cities are really small.
Yeah.
And if you know anything about physics, the reason why things are slow is because speed of light. Just the latency in these rooms, like how fast things are going to be. People are going to think it's all fake. It's going to be so fucking fast. Because it's like, sub-millisecond latency anyway, basically. I find it really interesting also what you said, because it's kind of like, there used to be when you went to a town, if you wanted to find something, you maybe could get a local guide or like get a book, like a guidebook, and they would be like, this bar is good, this restaurant is good. And then the internet happened, and for some reason we put all that on these like centralized sites where we rate things. And it's very centralized in this centralized opinion. But at the end of the day, when I go to a new town, I still ask the locals. I'll hit up my local friend and be like, where should I actually go, right? It's this very old school, super old school way of doing it. And technology just ignores that. And it's just like, no, you should just look in the big phone book.
Yeah, what's Yelp's 10 best things to do in this city?
And that's such a big disconnect for me on how I actually do it. So
there's a lot of places that still aren't online as well. They don't have online presence. They don't put the investment into SEO and Google SEO and all that kind of stuff. And
it's an uphill battle anyway. For most people, it's become so saturated, and because you don't have that sense of locality, it's work without even a payoff anymore.
Just when you say it out loud, I think it's so funny how you say it, because it's a restaurant.
Right. Exactly.
They're making food.
It's like, well, what's the SEO? It's like, I don't know, we make food. I cook. You can have your steak medium rare. Oh yeah. So the question was, what's the vision around implementing Bitcoin payments in the app?
So actually we used to do Lightning in the app, and then when we were in alpha and then beta, we actually disabled it temporarily.
And it's still temporarily disabled?
Just because we wanted to iterate it when we're not really happy with the experience and stuff like that. And now we internally revived it, and it's coming back. Our wallet in early next year is the plan, where you can do different kind of payments like tether payments to that. I think it's super important.
Yeah.
And Bitcoin payments also. It's super important because obviously, and also tying into the thing we talked about before with like local networks, city networks, being able to go to your restaurant and just pay by opening a chat with your local person. Again, and the same thing, like it should not be technology experts, you should just have a chat app.
Right.
Yeah.
Pay for your meal, get a picture of the receipt if that's what you need in the chat app. That's so powerful. So it's really, really needed, and something we really wanted to come back. We just wanted to have the experience we wanted to do. So we actually have a team now working on this internally. It was actually part of a big talk also at the conference about just wallets in general. So we're trying to solve this for everybody. So we're making like a development kit for wallets that run everywhere. So that's super exciting. So we're going to have tons of announcements about that soon. We're also still working a bit on our internal credit systems we talked about a couple of years ago. We're going to have some stuff on that soon also. So that's exciting. I shouldn't say anything more about that because then people will yell at me. And guys will lose more hair. But that's super exciting stuff. And it's really, really important to us. That's actually, I think that's the main point. People might think that's not important to us. It's really important to us. It's something we talk about a lot. So coming back soon.
Sweet. So what are some of the considerations regarding privacy and anonymity when using Keet?
Good question.
It is, I mean, I think anonymity is kind of a separate, very separate from privacy. So the technology we use in Keet is extremely private. You know, all your chats, all your communication, encrypted at rest, encrypted in transit.
There's no option for it not to be.
Yes, that's.
And also I think people, it's because again it's technology. It's hard to understand. Messages you send on Keet don't have to come from the person who's sending it. Like anybody can relay it, which creates this layer of like you can actually go anywhere, write some messages, turn off your network, and I can still read them later. So you can actually be insanely private if you wanted to, other than just like the default privacy. So it's really, really important for us to have that baked in. You should always, there's always a level of like paranoia. I guess it's the wrong. I don't know what's the positive word for paranoia. I don't know. Like just like
security sensitivity.
Careful.
Carefulness. No, just more like like I think it's a hard discussion, right? Because it's kind of like I'm in Switzerland. People know I'm in Switzerland. I don't need to hide that for myself. But other people definitely need to hide that because of other reasons. That's what I'm trying to say. So if you care a lot about that kind of stuff, you should still always use a VPN. I think it's always a good thing.
What's the anonymity side of things?
Yeah,
if you really care about anonymity, then you need to
defense in depth is always a good idea. Like just use all the tools. They actually very modular and they stack together. We do all the stuff we can do all the time to make everything as private as possible. Like Andrew says, the technology is insanely private. Adding more stuff on top doesn't make it worse.
But we're working on a P2P, right?
I don't know if we should talk about that.
Oh, okay.
Allegedly.
But yeah, sure. But I think it's like, like Andrew said, it's interesting. It's one of, again, as a non-English speaker, it's hard for me because the two words sound the same, but I'm sure they mean very different things. But it's
Because I mean, to get on the technical side of it, when you're in a Keet room with people, you're sharing data with them, and very similar to how how it's done in BitTorrent. And in BitTorrent, once you actually establish a peer-to-peer connection, you have that IP of other people who are in the rooms. So if you really, really care about IP secrecy completely, that's super important to you. Other tools would be needed. You'd have to layer that on yourself right now. But that's stuff that we can explore more also in the future.
Yeah, and I think it's important to distinguish. I mean, I think the cypherpunks really explained it better than anybody, and I think it's Timothy May who talked about like anonymity is about secrecy. It's about like not wanting anyone to know something and who you are, whereas privacy is simply the choice. You having the power to selectively reveal yourself to the world.
And that should just be a default.
And that should be the default, exactly.
Like that's just basic human rights.
Yeah. So anonymity is a question of, okay, well, do you want to go to the network level and do whatever you need to do something over Tor or whatnot? But otherwise, private is the default. You are like when we sit here and we're having a conversation, nobody's listening. Yeah. We're not sending the conversation to some server somewhere else and then routing it back to Mathias. Yeah. And that's true in Keet. Yeah. Like when we're chatting, I have a connection directly to him. Obviously, he can hear my half of the conversation and vice versa, and we are encrypted, but like...
It's between us.
It's between us. Yeah. It's between us.
We lived in a world where microphones were in every room recording everything that we said. Mm-hmm. That would feel very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But digitally, that kind of
is. Wink, wink, there's 10 phones in here.
I also find, again, just going back to how we use Keet today, because... It leads to all these fun conversations internally where we're like, because people have, because people use the automated names in Keet, and they have the default avatar, so we have all these conversations always internally. We're like, the dog said this.
The dog said
the dog bug.
Yeah.
Like the bear bug or the penguin bug.
I was about to say the emperor penguin. Yeah. I was like, you got to keep that one.
And just the fact that we do that, just for me, tells you everything. Right? It's kind of like, we have no idea.
Yeah.
We have no idea. We make the app. We have no idea.
Yeah.
Other than like, no, we talk, maybe we talk in the same time zone.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's what you know. But it's like, we don't even know. And the app doesn't require you to put in a phone number. I find it very interesting how quickly apps, even privacy apps, ask you to do that.
Dude, oh my God, it's always a phone number.
Yeah. We do nothing, right?
Yeah.
So we know nothing. It's just a key. The key is just a large degree of random bunch of strings.
Yeah.
That's really, really powerful. And I totally understand why other apps don't do it, because it's really hard. Mm-hmm. And also people want to have that list of users. Mm-hmm. People often ask us how many users we have, and we're like, I don't know. It's anywhere between 1 to whatever the max key is. More stars in the universe. We have an idea, obviously, based on activity, but that's the same idea you have.
Yeah.
We don't know more than you do.
Yeah. Get a sense of it.
And that's actually the point of this thing. Like, we don't even know.
Yeah.
If we knew, it's not very private.
Yeah. Okay, so question is, what are your plans around identity management and Web of Trust? And are you looking at what PubKey is doing and or Nostr?
I can just add a little thing to the first part, because it's actually something we've been talking about a lot with Wallet, which we talked about earlier. Because I actually think Keet identities work amazingly. They're very seamless. Andrew made all that code. It's amazing Andrew still has hair. It's going to be my recurring theme.
It's getting gray though.
I was about to say, give it a couple of years.
But it's one of those huge unlocks where I use Keet across multiple devices, and I'm the same guy across it. And I know how hard it is. It just seamlessly works all the time. I think the weakest part of that in Keet, just to be real, is actually the setup. There's a setup phase here where because we want people to store the seats and stuff like that. That's too complicated, just to be real. And we talked about that also a lot, and that's something we're going to be streamlining, having more options where the app can hold your seat for a bit, so you're not forced to do that step immediately. I think that's way too hard right now, and that's stuff we want to do. And that's luckily a very, very easy thing. But it's easy in technology, but like hugely important for UX. So if we ever want to onboard the next level of people like our families and stuff, that just has to be non-intense, and it is a bit intense right now. So that's really, really important for us, and that's something we're going to be tweaking also with Wallet, so it can be much, much better. In terms of looking what other protocols are doing, and with PubKey, so we're always looking at everything because it's shared efforts. We're actually using for IDs right now. We're using I can't remember one of the beeps from Bitcoin.
85.
39?
I don't want to.
I
don't want to say the wrong number. Somebody's going to be like, "What?"
Yeah. BIP 85 is. I think it's 85 is the one with the derivation keys.
Yeah, we're using. So we're just because again, like that's great.
Yeah.
Reviewed. Somebody's using. We are all for using all the stuff we're using. Why not?
Yeah.
Right. So we're always looking at everything. I'm never familiar with all the details, but we're looking at everything. So we're always, looking at that. So that's basically like the high level on that, I think.
Yeah.
But in terms of adding higher level things on top of this for Web of Trust, I think that's very interesting. I think it's the kind of thing that probably not super short term for us to be hitting that now that we have like a really nice identity experience. We're going to mainly, at least for the near term future, be focusing just on the core room experience, making sure that works, making sure you can recover your IDs and make IDs work really nicely. But IDs are definitely a really, really strong primitive for doing Web of Trust stuff later.
But even identity between apps as well, like you build another app and then you derive your identity from your Keet identity, and now we've got that all.
So it's actually funny because these guys are saying it, because Andrew is like saying Web of Trust, right? Web of Trust to me is also just a contact book on Keet.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like and literally just I'm gonna add Guy.
I mean, it's adding the contact and then saying, hey, these other contacts know this person. That's really all it is.
And then it's opening up ways.
I was about to say it's open source. When are you going to build it?
And we're going to release a ton of our ID stuff next week, actually.
Open source?
Open source, yeah.
Oh, shit, yeah.
Our pairing stuff also, because we reviewed it and we're happy with it. It's been working really well.
Nice.
We want more people to build on this stuff. Like, I would love to see more work also in the community on just Web of Trust stuff, because I think actually one of those things where I don't know if we're still fully settled on how that should work at a very technological level, and we'd love to see some iterations on that.
Yeah.
And like David is saying, because David works on platform mostly, super interesting for us. They also like, you should be able. You should send me an app, and it should say, "Guy from your contact book made this app."
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I would immediately.
It's just have my little signature, like my little.
Do you trust Guy?
InPub or whatever your thing is. Yeah.
If you trust Guy, then you can maybe use any of Guy's apps.
Yeah.
And we actually added this to platform already. We just haven't shipped it because we're waiting to.
That's cool.
And if you think about it, right, that's a bajillion times better than what they make you do now. Right now, to do that, Apple makes you pay $100 to get a key.
Yeah.
Windows makes you pay $1,000 to get a key.
As a certificate authority.
And then the certificate says random entity that Guy runs.
Yeah.
Sign it. I'm like, that means less to me.
Yeah.
It means less to me than like Guy actually ran this on his laptop. And it's Guy from the key room. It's not like compromised from something. So that's I think that's actually also the next level of trust for us, rolling that out. We have all that. We're just sitting on it.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
Sweet. That's awesome. And one element of all of that is I found in like what we're trying to do with a pair drive is that like all of it is agnostic. Like if you have a way to communicate or just attach data to a profile, like my Keet identity can also just have my InPub right there. And then if you want to load the Nostr ID in that data, you can just ask for the InPub data, and it can literally be the exact same thing. Yeah. Like, so it could just be a pub key blob that we're passing around that just has the whole stack of it's basically I posted on Twitter to prove that I'm this account over here. It's like, well, it's agnostic. Like, you've just signed something, so you can just carry it with you everywhere you go.
We should probably add that, huh? Like a little blob you can attach to the IDs.
Yeah. That's
done.
Yeah. If you want to build it for me, that would be great. Yeah.
Sounds like it's on the way.
Yeah.
Also, Andrew said, hard is easy, easy is hard, is easy.
So the question is, what features are on the roadmap?
Of Keet or Pear? Or
all of it. Just give me the whole list.
After this, I'm gonna go take a nap. No, seriously, like obviously DMs. We wanted to ship DMs a little bit earlier, but we wanted to iterate a little bit more, so we're shipping that.
Yeah, in the DMs release, we're also going to have a whole bunch of new moderation tools for rooms also, so you can kick people and ban people, and if somebody's spamming, boom.
That's cool.
The DMs adds like...
Yeah, that's an important thing just because of the nature of peer-to-peer.
Yeah, like you can lock your room, nobody can come in. DMs also adds a capability where you can actually add people without sending invites. That's how a DM works. So like, if I know you're in my contact book, I can add you to my
Just go ahead and sign for me.
Yeah, like just be like, I'm adding Guy. So
yeah.
And I think actually that's one of those things.
Oh, that's cool. A push rather than a pull kind of thing. Yeah.
We're missing tons of UI on that stuff. It's going to roll out in iterations, but it's actually one of those things where that's so much bigger than we realize, I think. Because right now, every Keet experience starts with a text message. Like, I send you a link.
Yeah.
So I'm
Telegram.
I'm using some other service.
It's out of band. It has to be out of band. Yeah.
With this, the entire experience can exist in the P2P world. So actually, like my text message, we're gonna go cold, right?
I can't tell you how many times I've sent my wife or April a text message. Check Keet.
Here's the string of words, and I think actually that's really, really important. And also just for privacy, also just for leaking it, controlling the experience. So stuff like that is rolling out, super important. We're rolling out, talked about that also, media mirroring. So we completely. Text mirroring, it's actually kind of the same problem, just one is a little bit bigger than the other one.
Yeah.
Works flawlessly most of the time, like very few bugs. Media mirroring is just the same, but with images and stuff. once we roll that out, people are gonna be like, oh, this is how I expect it to work.
Yeah.
It's actually really, really insane if you think about it.
Yeah.
It's just fully peer-to-peer.
No, I still have, like, as someone who used peer-to-peer for, like, literally, like, since 2000 or 97 probably, I don't even know. I was young. But who's used it the whole time. Like, every once in a while, I'll just, like, open up Keet and I'm just like, how the fuck does this work? This just does not make sense, you know?
Yeah.
It just seems undoable. Especially when you get to the point where, like, it's always been the user-friendly last mile.
Yeah.
It's always been the user-friendly last mile that was never there. The work had never been put in. But
yeah, I mean, totally agree. And just to add the last thing on that, obviously, then I don't know if this is a feature, but we're really pushing a huge performance upgrade the next month. Just
there's a huge amount of focus going into that.
just like core experience, user experience, super.
feature number 4, better.
Yeah, no, but seriously, it sounds and it sounds very man. Always when I talk to the marketing guys, they're like, "How do I explain that?"
I don't know, just say it's better.
It's just so important. Like the experience just has to be so flawless. And I get asked this a lot where people are like, are you worried about like ever being, catching up with the performance on Slack? And I'm like, you don't realize all our stuff is local.
Mm-hmm.
Like
It can definitely catch up.
Well, it's gonna surpass it by a magnitude.
Yeah.
Because like local is just really, really fast. We're just bad at it right now.
Just so you spent so long focused on the network stuff, the local stuff has just been ignored.
Yeah,
but like, local is really, I mean, how fast can you read shit off your hard drive, you know?
Not to put too much pressure on it, but I also think it's going to be a little bit of a concern because I don't think people are used to just writing things and they appearing on the screen and stuff. Like we're very big into that latency. Like for it to feel like it went through.
We have actually stopped optimizing at certain points because we're like, if we go further with this, people are going to think it's not real and they're not going to trust it. Like we got the distributable size down to like a very small size, and we're like, if we go further, people are just going to think it's a virus.
Yeah, exactly. Like the downloader, it's so true. Like the downloader, you get on the website. We had a discussion about this because that could be like 2 megabytes, and then we're like, if you download a 2 megabyte file. No, some creators going to be like, that's bad because it doesn't feel like an app. It's too small. It's like smaller. So we made it 20 megabytes and add a bunch of cache to it. like actually useful data that it uses to push it. And it's like then it feels more natural.
Yeah.
But it's like maybe over time we can do more of that stuff. But it's so interesting, it's so much fun. Sometimes we're just so wired.
That's crazy. That's crazy. There's one thing just on the nature of how fast and responsive, like when you have that connection. So like in one of the rough drafts, the architecture wasn't at all right, but we were just kind of like proving that we could do this. Had a version of a pair drive that I did keep to Linux, and I have my list of files, and then on the Linux machine I booted up so I can see the list of files. And then I was just adding and deleting, and I joined from both things. So I had a chat thing, I could see both desktops right next to each other, and I shit you not, like I couldn't, like my brain could not calculate the delay between deleting the file from the list on one computer and the video updating, which was not just the list updating, it was the list update being sent to the Linux machine, which then clears the list and then sends it back over Keet with the video frame back to my main machine to clear it. And I was just like delete, and it's just like both lists are like right in line with each other. And I was just like, oh my god, this is gonna be so cool when we're done with this
latency
shit.
Is crazy. We had one also where we were chatting in the office. I remember in the office latency, obviously we sit close to each other, for sure. I had one time where I was like, it felt like the message was sending before I was sending it. That's because when you click the enter button, it registers before it goes all the way down.
Yeah.
That latency for me to push it down was longer than
it was before the sound. It was like,
exactly.
It's like when the sound, you see the thing and then the sound hits you.
and your brain makes that uncanny. And that kind of experience you normally only get in a test environment where you're like, because we're testing a local server. This was just because the connection was as good as a test connection. That's crazy.
That's nuts. The question is, so he was very like, they should have been doing TypeScript. We had this long conversation about it. They should have been doing TypeScript. So many young developers are TypeScript only.
Yeah, sure.
And he was like, I wish they just wouldn't do JavaScript. And then we had the conversation not too long ago that he was like, okay, I think they made the right choice. Like he has shifted away. So the question really is,
What now?
are you going to be moving to a TypeScript compatibility so that people can build TypeScript within the environment? Or is it going to be a situation where you expect developers to come to the same realization that Hope did, that this should just be built in Java?
So the JavaScript. So the thing is compilation. TypeScript requires compilation. And that's a step that takes time, and that time affects your iteration speed. And the longer that takes, the more it affects it. Because then you start going, oh, I'll just check my emails, and then you get distracted and you do something else, and it's a productivity issue but that's one of the reasons. But in terms of what's next, we have something that's already out in Pear, but it's not very well communicated about currently, but it's called Pear Interface. Currently that's just JS doc, but we're going to move that to TypeScript.
Yeah. So you can do it also.
Sweet.
So that just declares the Pear global, and we'll declare the Pear global in there as well. But another cool thing, a feature of that is that when Pear updates on your system, it'll update your interfaces in your that you're using in TypeScript.
Okay,
so
cool.
We don't want to alienate a TypeScript audience.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with using TypeScript for certain situations. We're very small module focused and small service focused and all that kind of stuff. That's the way we like to do things. If what you're building is a massive monolith, which some applications might be, then types can be a decision that makes sense there. If the language had types, it wouldn't be an issue, right? But so we're gonna support TypeScript in terms of users and making sure that we can add DTS files to our modules and all that kind of stuff. But we want to decouple it from our own development process, and that's why we didn't address it until now.
Okay, sweet.
It's also as soon as we add that, we're not going to change anything else.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. It has to be after you're not going to break it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've got some API to remove before we can even do
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Try
yeah.
and make the API as small as possible and crunch it down. And when we know, okay, this is where it's at, and we're not going to make any changes to these APIs, then we want to get those types out.
We
Gotcha.
had one module that didn't have any documentation, and one of the guys in the Pear channel, I don't know if it was Hope, maybe somebody else, wrote a very nice PR sending documentation. He was like, and then one of our
Hope is a documentation freak. He loves there's probably Hope.
and one of our guys replied saying, "You don't realize it's undocumented for a reason. Once it's documented,
don't use it."
then it's in a friendly way. But that's kind of like we don't want to send the wrong signal. We're still in beta, we're iterating really hard. Things don't change much now. But as soon as things are not going to change at all, and we're very close to that point.
That's when you'll see things like that.
And we're all for it. Like David says, we're all for it. We have our own way of doing things. Iteration speed is really important for us. People should do what they feel is best.
Yeah.
Always.
And there's no point in, we want to support more and more people to build on top of this.
Of course.
In the future, this goes beyond JavaScript and TypeScript as well.
Yeah, to be likely implementations on completely different code bases.
It'll totally come. It's already a ton of stuff. David did a ton of stuff there, and all the stable parts, the rest will come.
Sweet. Okay, so the question is there a Pear phone on the roadmap?
Well, can I say first, I think dedicated hardware for peer-to-peer that's designed for peer-to-peer is very interesting. There are a lot of things that you could do. There are a lot of limitations on mobile phones today and even laptops that are just not optimal for what we need.
We've been so frustrated about the fact that we all run around with our computers in the pocket and they're turned off.
Yeah.
But they're not even turned off because every time you get a notification, they turn on. And we're so they are turned on. So why can't we just have them be peer-to-peer friendly all the time? Just get a little signal, get out messages. It's the ultimate peer-to-peer world.
Yeah.
They're just
built for background, built for that type of environment rather than expecting a centralized entity to be there.
It's really easy, but the hardware just there's a bit somewhere that's you can't do that. So we almost from the beginning we've been talking about we need to do that. And we want to do that, and we are doing that. So we are looking into that right now. We don't have a timeline for it.
Sure.
iPhone 2025.
2 weeks? No, just shut up, everybody. Shut up.
There's no long words, but obviously that's the future we want to get to.
Yeah.
And we're iterating that right now, and we're going to talk more about it. But for sure,
Sweet.
it's like Andrew says, it's like the easiest idea ever.
Yeah. Besides Keet as a chat app, what are other applications you would like to see?
really smooth, seamless file sharing apps. Really, really cool.
Hey, I know a guy.
Reels, actually, yeah. That's so true. Like just that integrates with Keet also. I think it's also like where we can have file apps that you can browse them. Stickers collections, things like that. I think that's very interesting.
I'm really interested in seeing the room model that Keet has generalized to different kinds of social applications. So like different kinds of rooms that are specialized to different things within Keet and also as separate apps would be really cool. So like media sharing rooms that kind of look like a Netflix UI, either standalone or in Keet. That'd be awesome.
I'd like to see
That may or may not be part of the reason that we're doing something, but
we don't even know.
I mean, there's a lot of apps that could be like replaced with peer-to-peer technology. And something that's frustrated me about apps that win marketplaces with good features and then unfeaturing those.
Oh my God,
making it
dude,
worse for users and
the enshittification of the internet is exactly right.
I'd really like to see a whole load of apps that kind of disrupt what's going on.
Unshittify?
Yeah, unshitify, yeah.
Is that biased? I don't think it's biased.
But also, like, I don't know. I think for me, one of the apps I'd like to see is something I've not thought of. As in, like, I want to be surprised by something that can't be done in a centralized way.
Sure, yeah.
And it's like, oh, wow. And then, I mean, just generally things that interact with the real world, with what's happening in real life, whatever that is.
I think there's a lot of scary apps like that. It's scary in the way of like disruption. Like, I think the first, when there's an app out there that's just, and this could be a feature in Keet, like the live streaming app where you can just go around filming unstoppable.
Yeah.
You can go to a football game and stream. Somebody's gonna shit their pants. High quality.
Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword. I think it really is, but I think it's also very exciting.
It's super exciting. Also, I also think just with the enshittification, like there's a lot of social apps out there, dating apps, for example. I think it's interesting because they're just all ruined by the wrong incentives.
Yeah.
Let's match people, but we only make money if people are unmatched. So let's not make that good.
Yeah.
Peer-to-peer takes that out, so people can make good apps like that.
Yeah.
And that's a whole range of categories like that.
Yeah.
So.
And from a personal perspective, I'm a huge wholesale junkie, which is built on top of the Pears stuff. And the ability to just run services, like one of the things before I leave, I always run a bunch of services that I use on my Linux machine, then set up a key, and then I can just throw it in my phone and I can access it. I can do my AI stuff, get my transcript, like those sorts of things. Like just having that direct connection so easy is just crazy. And then something that I saw, I think this was in like the Pear Babies room, the one where like everybody just talks about ideas, or Pear development, I'm not sure. But this one was like oh snap, I never even thought about that, was a Find Your Friends app. One that's just literally share your location, because like I use, Find My with my wife and sister, and like when we're trying to be like, okay, how far away are they or whatnot, but I hate it because this is all going to Apple and then going to them, and I hate that I have to use that service and I'm constantly going back into settings, turning off location, going back, turning it back on or whatever, because I want it to be useful when I want it, and I don't want it to be tracking me otherwise. But it definitely is if I forget. And just the ability to just have a peer-to-peer where I'm literally just into our little network, just sending a ping of my location. I know the only people who can see that are those people. And
that's all that's necessary.
Yeah, and you could do that in a museum. It's like, shit, how the hell they just left? Bring up your app. He's like, oh, he's looking at the dinosaur again. Of course. So question is, are there any plans for grants or investments in other peer-to-peer apps?
Totally. We already do a little bit of both, actually. We started out a small grant program it's very manual right now, just because we see a lot of people building really cool stuff and we want to help support that. So if you have good ideas for ways to improve the ecosystem and things like that, please reach out to us in our channels. Like I said, it's very personal right now. We're really peer-to-peer, people talking, we're like, yeah, let's figure it out. Yeah. But we got a bunch of good documentation guides out of that already, and a few example apps and stuff. So that's really exciting for us. We're going to do more of that stuff going forward. For investments, we want to see this thing go freaking mainstream. Like take over everything. and that's going to require money. Like, let's be real. Like, I guess people have to eat. And so we're working really hard to also set up, frameworks for that and investment vehicles for that, for people to make apps and get support like that. And that's something we're very, very interested in, just because we want to see this succeed. We want to see all these apps. We can't build all of it. We don't want to build all of it. We're already.
It's not just a can. It's like, I just don't want to until I can get that time.
So always, always reach out to us. We're in all the channels. We're gonna be more stuff about this as we grow, and it's gonna be more structured.
And that's also the big unlock too. Is you talk about like you want to see the app that you don't expect. That I want to see somebody bring something to you that you're like, oh, that in hindsight is obvious, and it's just going to be some unique perspective or unique situation or some 14-year-old who's just like, oh yeah, it could all just be peer-to-peer, who's like come up with some idea.
We have to be moving from one frame to the other. So we still have to remind
there's
ourselves.
unlearning that we have to do, and there are some people who won't.
In those paradigms, they're different.
It's gotta be scary. It's gonna be really scary.
Good scary.
Thrilling.
It's not the word. There's so many English words.
Awesome. Okay, is there a plan to integrate machine learning? I'm still bugged by the AI. Even as someone who has a podcast, AI Unchained, is there a plan for AI machine learning in Keet?
Yeah. No, but it's actually one of those cool things where actually almost immediately when we launched Keet, we were talking about, because Keet is really fun because it's very international already. There's people from all over the place, China, Taiwan, you name it, right? And as an old Star Trek fan, the universal communicator, it's always interesting to me. We were like immediately like, we need to be able to talk to people in their own languages.
Translation.
We did translations from the very beginning. We did tons of translations.
Translations are wild. Like LLMs are so much better than the traditional. It's crazy. And it's funny. I actually think about LLMs as like they are a universal computer translator. Like that's really what it is. It's not AI. It's literal translation. It's translation from English to Python. It's translation from English to Portuguese. It's a model of contextual patterns that can translate between any type of computer data.
But I mean, the real challenge for us with peer-to-peer is like, we need it to run on the device. It needs to be all on device.
Exactly.
That's a real constraint. Most of these models.
I think because it's kind of like it's a cool feature, not on device, very dystopian.
not on device, it's awful.
And we immediately was like, we need to do it on device. It's a huge constraint. Set up a team. At some point, we realized this could be very generic. And Tether took a huge initiative on that, and they're making Tether AI now, just as local first AI. And we're gonna be deploying a ton of that stuff in Keet soon. Like translations is the first thing we want to do. It's almost there. And it's AI that can run anywhere because it's running on the engine. So it can run, on your watch, on your phone, on the desktop. Same models, just all the same JavaScript and these models. So that's super exciting. And I think translations is very easy to understand, but there's so many more things. Once this starts,
that's just kind of the naive first thing that you would
I always say, centralized AI, I want to feed zero amounts of my data. It already has a lot of my data, like the open source data. I want to give it nothing else because it's really scary to me. Local AI, I want to give it everything. I want to give it everything.
It's going to be better the more I give it. Like the local, it's my AI. It's totally
So it's really, really important just for me personally. That's also why I'm like always pushing about this internally, because I really want it. I want to watch movies. I can find the best movies. Et cetera, et cetera. So that's definitely coming.
Sweet. Okay, so are there any proof of concept apps for things that are coming?
So actually, it's one of those things where, like Andrew talked about earlier, we make everything generalized, collaborative, generalized. We actually had an internal process earlier where we're like, the best way to explain these things is actually just make an example app. Because I hate reading about code. I just want to run it and be like, how does this work? And how that works is just like 100 lines of code. I understand it immediately, rather than reading about it. I'm not a very big reader. Sometimes that has consequences.
I can help if you need.
So we're like, let's make some example apps. And then the problem is, as soon as we start making example apps, we realize, wow, this is actually just a really good app. So right now we're making like a password manager app as a test. We actually had one of the guys who applied who made a password manager app also by himself. I think it's one of those cool concepts where it's not that hard when you have the technology. Super useful, like sharing, very private, sensitive. It's great.
Will never close down.
Will never close down, and also acts as a good example app, which is kind of scary because like how can something that complicated be an example app?
No honeypot.
Yeah.
As someone who's now has to change everything again, but recently just had to do a run through for like a whole week because LastPass got hacked. Like, God, a local freaking between my devices password manager is.
It's amazing how much hassle there is with a central point of failure.
Yeah, like enormous, and there's no reason to like it's just because like the payoff of being able to hack all of LastPass and then be able to just like take your time and seeing who's got a weak enough password in this massive database. Totally. And it's like, it's so antithetical to the idea of security, right? So yeah, that's a huge one.
And that's our example. I think that's actually kind of crazy.
Yes.
And that's directly applicable also into to-do apps. So we're going to make some example apps on that, and also those are useful and things like that. And actually, just having a little framework for that, so anybody can just, if you want to make an app like that, you can just start with this thing. No cheating. It's just like the data structures, but just like 100 lines of code up and running. Super cool.
Hell yeah. Okay, so how, I guess, resilient or whatever is peer-to-peer that if, I can't remember if a government or Wi-Fi decides that, ISPs decide that they don't want to allow peer-to-peer traffic. Well, Well,
I mean, ISPs right now, it's very asymmetric, the upload download. They're not really used to people having huge amounts of upload, which is really useful for peer-to-peer.
Yeah.
So I think it's possible in the future, it'll definitely get their attention. Whether that gets cracked down on, I think it's unclear. Maybe in certain areas it could be problematic, but I don't anticipate any massive issue.
It's like it's obviously it's a technological discussion, and then also not like Andrew was saying, because it's like the technology itself it's just encrypted traffic. It's not like you can just be like block P2P traffic. You can block a ton of traffic, including P2P traffic, but you have to apply a very, very big net that's going to be very disruptive for people. That'd be a really frightening future, I think. If there's a massive scale crackdown on that, then other things have gone wrong.
It's hard to be very targeted about exactly what kind, because I'm just connecting to an IP address and sharing encrypted information.
Yeah.
So if that becomes difficult for me, it's a question of what have they targeted, because they can only paint very, very broad strokes, and that's a place that I probably will just need to leave just to get out of there.
And just to refer back to some of the stuff we talked about earlier, because the thing is also about getting serious. Because part of when we were just working on this as open source, like small things, like just like hackers getting small funding, I think then it's a real concern.
Yeah.
That's why we're like, we don't want to do that. We want to make something where this becomes like a behemoth that's unstoppable. Also in this sense, so if we have to deploy new infrastructure, we'll talk about that and make a plan for that. This technology has to be unstoppable in every way. And it's not going to be tomorrow or somebody's going to try to block it.
But I think maybe our goal, we can say it's to get to that point where it actually does become a talking point, like it's something to discuss. If there's a world with millions and millions of people uploading tons of data to each other, and self-sustaining these networks, it'll get people's attention, and like that'll be something to deal with then.
And also just the way the world is moving right now, I'll be more scared as a person on the immediate timeline. Just they're going to block much more centralized things very fast.
Yeah.
Things like cut off more parts of the internet. I think we'll probably run into a future soon where this, we already had that, but like certain countries can't connect to certain countries and things like that, which is by just literally somebody cuts the cables. And stuff. So it's a general problem. It's a general concern. But peer-to-peer is definitely the way to also fix this. Because
and to work around it if we need to.
Yeah, and it doesn't peer-to-peer because inherently it doesn't care where the traffic comes from, right? You can send it to a satellite and beam it down. It's fine. It doesn't matter. You can beam it out with a radio. It's fine. It doesn't matter.
It's about a connection, not any particular one.
Exactly, and I think actually that's actually the huge unlock, because that's where it just becomes so hard. And having worked with BitTorrent in BitTorrent's heyday, I just remember, I always tell this, so many resources went into blocking that. Because that was actually where I was at that scale. And they couldn't, it was so hard. It was so hard. And they do all kinds of stuff to block it, right? And that's all the stuff we work around today. So now we have solutions for all that stuff, and I'm sure that's gonna be. It's warfare. It's gonna be back and forth.
Yeah.
But they couldn't. At the end of the day, they couldn't. So it's kind of like the same story, I think.
Yeah. And I think it's a good point to just remember that centralized they're going to block the centralized first. Like inevitably, it's going to be harder to do the peer-to-peer than it is every other avenue that we have.
But also, people don't even realize how easy it is to block centralized.
Yeah.
People are like, the thing is like, oh, we got to call Facebook and be like,
Yeah.
no, they go to that DNS record and they turn off the record.
Yeah.
Happens all the time.
Yeah.
So it's scary easy.
Yeah.
There's probably just one guy who can do it who works at that office.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, sure. I can give you probably a general overview. Obviously, Hope would be much better informed about this specifics, but we've had to kind of go back to the drawing board a couple of different times. But the basic idea is built around that problem between getting from my MacBook to my Linux. And then also one of the really cool things about Pear is that to get files or to be able to build this for all platforms at once. Because one of the things that gets me, and every time I've tried to use Nextcloud or the long list of just frustrating and not user-friendly options is, like, we're out here at the conference, I pull out my phone and I take a picture of us, like, well, we'll do that as soon as it's over. And I want to be able to put this in my Pear drive. And then the second it gets a connection to any of my other devices, it uploads. Like, it just goes there. Like, and my Linux machine is at home waiting for a connection, and it just uploads to that computer. And if I lose my phone, but it's been 20 minutes and I've been connected to the internet since I took the picture, it's there. I didn't lose anything. And the number of things that I can do. And so it's interesting, the way we've built it this latest time, which I think we've finally kind of got the architecture right. And it's simpler. The whole thing's just kind of an abstraction. Is basically everybody has their own hyperdrive, and then each device just has a policy for what to do with those hyperdrives. So like every device is a peer, and obviously we'll abstract a layer of people on top of the device peers. But we want to start with just like local networks, and as in like my devices, like my MacBook, my phone, my Linux, like that sort of thing. But just make it so like the user experience is literally just you go, you scan the key or whatever, boom, ask to join the network, approve it if it's something where you're not sure if it's not your ID, and then you see the list of files, and you select a couple of different devices. Like, let's say my Linux machine, I say I'm an admin, and the policy is any device that puts any file in any of the hyperdrives, download it. Download it, just be there. And then everybody who joins automatically has a read-only, so everybody can see the whole list. And it's just kind of like a normal BitTorrent or whatever, is that, you have your help. Like, okay, well, this device, there's 2 people online, 2 little check marks, or, whatever it is in the thing. And this one's grayed out because it's only on the phone, and the phone's not online right now. And then you can just selectively go through, and we have a little metadata packet on top of it for thumbnail, info, and all that stuff. And that's just an index that syncs through the swarm automatically, so everybody has it locally. And you can look through and you can look at the images, it could be a Netflix or YouTube sort of thing. Like, the interface is completely agnostic. You can make it look however you want it to look. But the idea is just file sharing is easy. It's just easy, and there's been...
And unlimited.
Yeah, and unlimited. And obviously the long term, I expect tons of different problems as soon as we start getting into the whole public network side of it. And that's clearly where we want to go. Like, I think what you guys have built is such a strong foundation for this that I think the end goal of making BitTorrent look old and stupid is not out of the question. And that's kind of where I want it to go, is that BitTorrent always felt like piracy, whereas Netflix felt like legitimate. And it's like, why do these things feel differently? They shouldn't. Like, it should be like there should be the same protocol. There should be one good protocol for getting files, or one good foundation for getting files from computer to computer. And if you want it to look like Netflix, make it look like Netflix. If you want it to look like you're pirating, I don't even know. If you want it to look like a developer environment, make it look like that. But it shouldn't change. It should just work. So that's kind of the idea. And I guess I haven't really gone into it publicly yet, but hopefully 2 weeks.
I always love it. I love it when we have these peer-to-peer apps and you're just explaining it from a personal scale. Because even the personal scale is hard.
Yeah.
Because we have so many devices. We have all these problems also.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, as you were talking, I was thinking about the file sharing challenges we've hit in Keet, also with like the UX experience around file downloading and just getting info out about how much you have on your device and how much other people you might have uploaded. And so as we solve those problems also in the UX and Keet and like all of this stuff we're adding, that'll just help.
Makes my job a lot easier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
saves me a lot of Bitcoin.
Well, Hope, who was also working on this, I think, right? He texted me the other day and he's like, how do I do progress management? And that was like 5 minutes after one of our guys just pushed it, and I was like, go look at the latest commit. He was like, oh, yes, that's awesome. And that's kind of like going back to this thing we talk about, like solving things generally so other people can build. It's so powerful.
Really nice.
So powerful.
The other thing is like I'd like to see with that the file sharing, or if you're like media streaming or whatever it is, like I want to see a new resurgence of content creators.
Yeah.
Who can get paid for their content.
Oh yeah.
Right. And
that's 100% a part of where we want to take it. 100%.
We're all getting to that point.
The question is essentially along, and this is kind of close to my heart as well, because like one of the things that I've been most excited about since LLMs and since this peer-to-peer stuff is this idea of these single serve apps, is things that just do something very specific, do not require me any of the overhead and the centralized and the account and all that bullshit, is that I can just make a function and it can be delivered to all of my devices if I need it. So the idea is, how are you thinking about and how will people be able to build maybe plugins for Keet or compatible apps that can take a Keet link and use it in a different way, or that I can have a Pear Drive link with a file and I can send it to somebody over Keet and it loads right in because it's a Pear link. It's the same as how everything else talks.
Yeah.
So
I think there are multiple sides to that. So for the Pear link stuff, the Pear Drive links, or the Pear Drive links, because it's all just hyperdrives internally under the hood, including inside of Keet. That's how we share files there.
Yeah.
Those might just be automatically compatible in the sense that any drives that you generate inside of Pear Drive, if you post a link to that in Keet, the preview system would be the exact same as the preview system that's used inside of Keet itself. That's one of the cool things about peer-to-peer, is because it's all the same data structures, so you might just get automatic compatibility. That would only go so far, though. I think if you add a lot more custom stuff to Pear Drive, then you might start to diverge, and then you would need actual plugins. And we actually implemented an early version, like a prototype version of plugins in Keet as part of the identities push when we got IDs out. So it's one of these crazy things where the way IDs are implemented, it's all just a room. Like in Keet, you have a little hidden room between all your devices, and that's how your IDs can
just sharing messages with yourself. Basically.
So it's just another room on top of a room. Yeah. It's rooms all the way down.
It's actually really cool because when you add a device, you're actually just inviting it to that room. Seriously,
it's all rooms. So
it works great.
That's awesome.
But as part of that, we implemented that as a plugin system inside of the room code itself. So we have plugins, but we're going to revisit that. I think we're going to kind of scrap this version of plugins and do them in a much nicer way on top of the new room database that we're making. And so as part of that, you could definitely expect us to start making a kind of plugin interface for Keet that'll let you, create custom UI elements and all the things you might expect chat plugins to do. But that's also a little bit TBD. We have to define the APIs.
But I think it's kind of like the essence of this is like peer-to-peer data is always self-described, right? So if you post something that's self-described, it's just fancy words for like there's not like a server or something. It's just describing the data. Yeah. So it's actually a really easy problem because there's no privacy lost in this. It's not like all of a sudden you can read all our stuff by posting this link because it's just data. And then the problem just becomes, how do we render this data? Which has, complexities, but
it has implications.
Yeah, but it's not that hard. Like, it's not that hard. Like, compared to all the stuff we do, it's not that hard.
Yeah. So it's like somebody having like a special function in Markdown and not being able to see it displayed in a different Markdown compatible app.
Exactly.
It's like, well, if you just tell them, they can just be like, oh, display it this way. You know?
Exactly. It's pretty close to that.
Yeah.
And then it's just a matter of having a way to express that, so you can plug that into Keet. That's the system Andrew's describing. So, and that's also should be peer-to-peer, right?
Yeah.
And should have not us in the loop, stuff like that. So yeah, it's super exciting. I think.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Lots of possibilities there. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so question is, I guess technically, you're thinking about it from the context of broadcast rooms as well, but how can you like cross-post so that I could like tag or pull something from one room to post and share just that in another room? And or if I've got my RD memes and the Guy Swann network and, this thing, a bunch of different broadcasts, how could I put these into an aggregate feed so that I can just see all of that content from in one location?
I think one way to tackle it. So as part of identities, we talked about this, the room, the shared room that's goes between all your devices. This is very private. This is like for sharing all your private data between your different devices.
Yeah.
But it'd be very natural to also, as part of having an identity, to have a public profile. Something you can write Twitter-like posts to, that you can add to from all your devices. It would also just be a room, but it'd be a public one that you could share. And we might want to render that as more of a feed view. So if you would just want to broadcast content for yourself, you would just add that to your public profile, and then people could see that. That'd be a supernatural thing to add. So then, for each of your contacts in your contact book, you could see their public feeds, and maybe you could, follow them, and do all those other things you expect. So that would be one form of aggregation.
Totally.
That would be really good. Yeah.
I also think just for like doing any kind of thing that is not like a feature, peer-to-peer is just code. It's just code running your device. There's no endpoints. So we have APIs for all this stuff. You can very easily instrument all this stuff. We haven't released many of these APIs because we're not really satisfied with how they work from people outside, just like new users. I.e., it's actually way too easy to just nuke your own data, which you're always very concerned about because we invest a lot. You invest a lot in chat, right? And we want to make sure that you don't accidentally corrupt that. But obviously, once we have that, because we're doing a lot of stuff like we talked about, then we're going to roll that out, and then you can actually just script whatever you want, because anything you can see in Keet is just P2P operations. There's nothing hidden. Like there's nothing that the app does that you can't do with a piece of JavaScript. And I think actually that's really, really powerful because there is no API. It is an API.
There's an exciting implication here as well in that once we start talking about aggregation, then you have to start talking about, well, how and when and where and is that information presented to me and whoever else? And so then you start getting into like, well, algorithms, like what algorithm determines what's shown. And at the minute, like in the centralized space, you get the algorithm that you're given, right? And that's it. But a marketplace of algorithms, so you can select, like different people have done it in different ways so that you can kind of get something that works for you. It's a whole other ecosystem that evolves from this.
Totally. It's funny because when you say that also, I'm just thinking it totally revolutionized how we build software internally. Because when we release a Keet and the runtime, we make new releases, obviously that's peer-to-peer. We do it all through Keet. So we have a bot running that's just a Keet user. It's just a robot that's just using the Keet API that we have. And it's just watching the swarm. So every time we make a test build, it watches that and then it posts in our Keet room saying, hey, there's a new build. And then you can interact with that bot and say, we want to release it. Releasing is just multisig. It's just a matter of.
Oh, cool.
It's just a matter of we go to our cold keys and we tell that bot, hey, make a signing request. It just messages David and me and like the other signers, and then we just do our thing async, really async. Right? Sometimes David is somewhere, takes 2 days, doesn't matter. We just post a signature back to the bot. Then the bot is like, oh, I got the quorum now. I'm just going to compute the signature for you, fully trustless. Post it back in the room. I literally just take that and I paste it into a script that just publishes to the swarm. It seems very scary, but it's just a signature. Then in your phone goes ding.
Dude, you needed like a formal set of that. Like that's its own ecosystem in itself. That's like private Git.
Yeah, I know, right?
Like that's crazy. With a multi-sig like publishing, that's that's crazy.
And what I love about that is like it's just a chat app.
Yeah.
It's just a chat app. Like it's one of those things if you went to Oracle or whatever, they'd be like, no, we have a solution for that.
Yeah.
It's gonna be $100,000, get the multi-sig solution. No, we're just using the freaking chat app.
Yeah, but it's so cool because you've got you've got such sort of like, you've got Keet and you've got Pear, and then you're like, oh, I need to do this thing with Pear, and then you're like, but I need to do this, we can use Keet to do that, and then like, so Keet facilitates Pear and Pear facilitates Keet, and it just keeps going round and round. It's
very,
really
very
powerful.
circular.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where once we had to restart the build, I remember, and we didn't have Pear running, we're like, it's so circular, it's actually really hard. Stack flow going, because you need Pear.
Once it takes off though.
Yeah, you need Pear to build Pear.
Yeah.
So I think that just like the TLDR is actually all possible.
Yeah.
Because it's just code.
Yeah.
And
What can you write and what can you look at locally on your machine and how? What can you not? Yeah.
And the only reason actually I think is why we have the question is because we haven't published it all yet.
Yeah.
Once we publish it, that's when it's going to get really scary. Because then there's going to be a lot of stuff going on. And it's going to be really fun.
The question is, and this is something we've talked about in previous episodes, because it's such a huge element of this, is the complete, essentially, lack of infrastructure costs. And especially with really popular apps or anything, like I've had this conversation actually with Free Market Kids and Scott and Tali, because they're trying to build a game and they don't want to have to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to have people log into a game on their servers. So the question, the heart of the question really is that, let's say somebody has an enormous amount of infrastructure costs to give this app to these users. How difficult and or possible is it for them to take what they already have and to make it work in a peer-to-peer environment, or do they have to kind of rebuild it within the peer-to-peer framework in order to get that benefit of zero infrastructure?
Yeah. I think there's this really interesting property of peer-to-peer where some of the centralized apps that would be most expensive to operate infrastructure-wise and bandwidth-wise, like media sharing apps, for example, they also have really, really minimal collaboration models. Like they might not be collaborative, they might just be publish, broadcast. That's very simple to do peer-to-peer.
Yeah.
So in some ways, like the easiest ones to do peer-to-peer are also the most expensive.
They're the most.
And like, expensive here means like millions of dollars.
Yeah. Like if if you're somebody sitting on your couch and you want to create a TikTok clone or something like that, if that's something you want to do, I don't know if you would. That'd be incredibly expensive for you to start prototyping and start building, just because you'll immediately be blocked by bandwidth costs just everywhere. In peer-to-peer, it's a pretty simple thing to do. Just at least the broad strokes of the design.
And it's also, I think it's like Andrew was saying, it's one of those things where every time you move media into peer-to-peer, it's the same process. Because it's like there's very established patterns and centralized systems for making media sharing. So you just do it once and you can more or less put over all your things.
From a more technical perspective, if the thing is implemented in Node, for example, Pear on top of Bear supports the same things as Node.
Yeah, you can just deploy.
So you can just kind of put stuff across.
So it's a question really of how they have built it so far.
To a certain extent, but like the front end, like is obviously going to be integrated maybe with like HTTP or GraphQL or something like that. You just need to take that piece out and then just integrate it with the hyperstack, and with like things like HyperDB on the way, which is really, really, really compelling. It's like a MongoDB type interface. These are familiar interfaces. We have Hyper-B, that's just a key value store. It's all familiar interfaces, and those sorts of things will be being used already. So it's just a case of swapping certain pieces out. But certainly if it's on Node already, like we're not Node, Pear is not Node at all, it's a totally different thing. But on top of Bear, you can set it up so that it just runs all the Node code straight up.
I think a big part of this, it really just kind of depends on the collaboration model that your app uses. I think that's actually what dictates it. So if you have a very, very advanced patterns for how data is collaborated on with the different users in the system, that kind of determines how difficult the porting process.
I think if you just boil it back to the essence of the question, is like cost. Right. And I think it's actually cost. Like you said in the talk, the bigger the cost, the easier it is, which is kind of fun, right?
Yeah.
I guarantee you, if the company comes to like we're spending millions and millions on video, we're going to be like, weekend project, right?
Yeah.
And if they're like we're spending thousands and thousands of dollars on something, we're going to be like, it's probably hard. And it's actually
inversing the internet.
Because Andrew said the truth in the first 2 minutes of this answer, and then we just started talking about the harder things, which is the less cost. So it's probably like
it justifies it as well. Like,
it's really funny.
If you've got 800 million a cost year, you just put the money in and do the migration.
Keep spending this thing.
There's the
tiny fraction.
It's also an inverse like cost benefit analysis. Like if you're spending that much, like it makes sense to spend 20 million, even if it did cost 20 million,
It's
to
almost
spend
like-
it to get that infrastructure cost gone.
It's almost like you should have built it this way in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Almost like that.
Truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So bots inside of Keet and in just kind of generally the Pear ecosystem being accessible that way. And then also just because of what's happened with my computer and the break-in and everything, it's now suddenly relevant to keys being held in RAM and hardware being used to sign or open things up.
Totally.
So bots and security. What are
Let's talk about
naive thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, so we have bots in some of the key rooms currently, but they're very manually done. Like it's kind of a tricky process to get them.
Kind of cool way, I think, because it's just like a messy script, because it's just using the API.
Yeah, exactly. But going forward, we do want to have a bot API that makes it incredibly easy to add these things into rooms in general. And we're thinking about building based on the Pear terminal system, we want to make a little framework where you can just super easily and very, very safely write a bot that you can then deploy, and it'll handle all the nitty gritty.
Like obviously, a Keet bot should be running on your laptop, like not on a server. So it should just be like a button you click in Keet and it's like, also run this bot for me.
Yeah.
And it's just running.
Yeah.
There's no reason why not to.
What's also cool is there are two kinds of bots you can have. You can have a bot that you're running somewhere as a service in the network that is external. It's like looking at the chat and then writing chat messages as a user. And you can have something like it's a very different kind of bot that runs inside of the room code itself and kind of like as a plugin. And there are really interesting things you could do with that kind of look like bot behaviors. Like you can have a plugin that maybe is going to play a game of like tic-tac-toe. And that's kind of like a tic-tac-toe bot, but it actually runs in the code itself. And you could just deploy that just as a little Pear mini app kind of thing.
Sweet.
So there are different ways to approach it.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Yeah. Lots of possibilities.
It's kind of like installing an app inside your app.
Exactly. So
All right. So second question
Yeah.
was security, keys held in RAM, potential hardware devices for like really cracking down or making sure that you're not vulnerable if you're using an untrusted machine.
It's funny you say that because it's actually we're doing a really big push on that right now. Because we know we're beta, we iterate hard. So some things we get too fast, some things we don't get too fast. Actually, we've been talking about this for a long time.
Yeah.
It's really, really important to us. And as part of, so we've been doing this RocksDB rewrite of some of the internals where we switched to new storage, and we actually was like, as part of that, let's think this in from the beginning. Because then we don't have to do a migration. So we're thinking that in from the beginning, so you can have much more easily pluggable keys and stuff like that. And I think that's going to be really, really important for just anything in the future. That you have, all your apps should just be, you can put a thing in your computer, run it, and take a thing out, nothing can ever run.
Yeah.
So that's definitely coming. It's something being worked on very aggressively right now. The only reason why we haven't done that aggressively before is we have a lot of stuff to figure out. We want to get stuff out first. While this is insanely important, making sure that the chat runs and stuff is also really important.
Yeah.
But it's just to say, like, we're actually working on this right now, and I think that's going to be really cool. And I also think it's like having keys on hardware devices. It's probably really important for some people, but also just having keys on my phone and not on my computer already makes it a lot better. So for normal people that don't have all these extra devices can play. So we want to have like a modular system where you can kind of like pick what you have. But
it's always a tough balancing act because again, Keet is targeting consumers that might not have tons of technical knowledge of this, and so it's kind of like you want to both
optionality at least
exactly.
is really
optionality without it being like exactly like that all the non-key users are fucked. It's like secure by default, but you can tune that extra. What was the positive word for paranoia? I don't know.
Do we ever come up
careful?
With
Carefulness, so we have an extra step there, but that should be coming in like a very short time frame.
Sweet. All right. Well, shit. Guys, I just want to say, it's been a pretty serious trip watching all this stuff evolve, and especially getting to the point where I felt like I could do something with it, just out of pure selfishness, I guess. Is that I can build something, and I've never been in that position before, and it's only, like I said, talk about standing on the shoulders of giants, is I'm using a platform built on top of a or a set of protocols and things built on top of a set, built on top of a stack, and then using an LLM that's probably trained on all of y'all's open source code in order to produce something built on top of it that I can just deliver to friends immediately, which is just
so cool.
bonkers. So, but this is the first time we actually got to hang out.
Yeah.
Thanks,
so much
with
fun.
actually meet in person. So,
Thanks so much.
guys,
Thank you, guys.
seriously,
Thank you.
it's been an absolute
Nice to
pleasure.
finally meet you in
Yeah.
person.
Yeah, man. So,
Cool.
appreciate
Thanks
you for
again.
joining me, man. Always.
Tons of fun.
Yeah.
Thanks.